One of the things that my wife and I learned, and this was actually after a Disneyland vacation, we got back, and for us, like for many people, Disneyland, if you're going and going and going and having a blast, you're tired when you're done.
Yeah.
And then you get back, and then you have to wake up in the morning, you go to work, we're like, well, that stinks. I'm still tired. We like to end our vacations on Saturdays. Make sure we come home on Saturday. So then we still do have our rest day on Sunday.
Yeah.
And that gives us a day to just chill and kind of do nothing. But then it also gives us a day as a family to do our family calendar. I would strongly recommend that. Like you've got your week unplug or your time where you go to Disney. I would make sure that you take a day afterwards just to, 1, rest your body, 2, rest your mind, and 3, organize with your family what the next week's going to look like.
Welcome to the Stewardship Podcast, where we help you understand that stewardship is about more than just finances. Today, Grant and I are going to be talking about stewarding our rest.
And we talked about rest before
on the
podcast, but in this episode, we want to specifically talk about how to rest effectively on, say, like a vacation or maybe a long weekend. I mean, a lot of us have spring breaks coming up.
Yeah.
Our kids are going to be out of school. In Arizona, many school districts take 2 weeks off in spring.
Yeah. In real time, as we're recording this, in 7 days, I will be out of town or headed out of town.
Yeah.
To go to Disneyland with my family. So I want to know how do I make this the most effective time in my life so that our listeners can do that in their lives.
Yeah.
That's why we're doing this today. So,
and I got to stop the podcast for a second and just, I showed up for this podcast and I literally, all I had to do was walk into the room, put on the headphones, finish my coffee, and we're recording. You do an excellent job of just like making it happen. Like before we hit record, you were like, I feel like I'm not prepared for this podcast because this is just so easy. You have put in a lot of work to just make this podcast production easy. And it's especially easy for me, and I'm grateful for that. So I'm excited that you get to take time to be with your family, completely unplugged from stewardship, and go to Disney and have a good time. I can't wait to see pictures of Olive in her engagements with princesses and all the things.
Oh, she loves them so much.
Oh, man, it's going to be great.
Thanks for saying that. I appreciate it. Yeah. In the previous podcast episode, we talked about the importance of rest. We had Brandon on the show, one of our favorite guests, Brandon, who works here, our friend.
His stories are the best.
He's great. He talked about how important rest is. If you missed that episode, you can find a link in the show notes. But while we all understand how important it is, sometimes I think for me, the challenge is like, how do I do it effectively? I get why it's important.
But that question seems like, what do you mean? Well, this is what you mean. Have you ever gone on a vacation and then it's over and you're like, I don't feel rested at all.
Exactly.
Like I'm more tired or I'm more worn out or I'm more frustrated or I'm more upset. Like whatever the thing is, I didn't escape anything,
Right.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
We've all been there. And there's some very simple, intentional things that we can all do to ensure that we get the result we want from the rest, right? It's like there's a reason to rest, okay? But if we're not doing the rest correctly, the why behind the rest doesn't happen correctly. So.
Yeah. When I come back to 1,000 emails or just higher workload before and after, that can be stressful. So we're going to talk today about how to prepare for rest and how to make some intentional decisions before and during time away from our work and our regular lives, so that when we come back, re-entry isn't like this overwhelming concept. Yeah. And
really it just starts with a mindset that we have to be realistic. I think too often we think that there's a magic pill that we can take to escape from some of our issues, or we are frustrated or overwhelmed, so we just take this magic pill, which is a vacation, right? And we think like, okay, all I need to do is just like get away. Or all I need to do is just go on a vacation and it'll fix everything. And it doesn't, right? And we're upset or we're frustrated when that doesn't happen. And we need to be realistic that the vacation in itself isn't going to fix everything. But more importantly, whatever problems or frustrations or things we're trying to escape, they're all still there when we get back.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're compounded or piled up now, as you mentioned, with the emails. And there's just really some good intentional things that you can do before, during, and after to make the rest as awesome as possible. But unless you have a proper mindset going into the vacation, like, hey, I'm going on this vacation. I'm going to try my best to rest and rest well. But the reality is life still happens while I'm away.
Yeah.
Like things aren't going to necessarily get better just because I leave. You know, those things that I am resting from will need to be dealt with when I return. Right?
Yeah.
And that's important to note. That is very, very important for us to be realistic. Like, yes, vacation. Yes, rest. We need to do those things. They're very good. But we get back and those things will still be there, right? And then we have to just know that going into it.
One important aspect of that mindset is it's super important to communicate.
Yeah.
Something we do around here is the ideal year calendar. Everybody turns in an ideal year, and on that, we've had a podcast about that as well. But we all kind of make a guess as to when we're going to take time off work, so that we can communicate that to everybody else here. And that's something you, Grant, are great at. Is you've got your months of focus. You used to call them months away, but now it's not so much. You're not away, but you change your focus from the day to day to some bigger projects.
Yeah.
But what's great about it is there's a lot of communication ahead of time.
Yep.
When we're trying to schedule podcast recordings, it's like, okay, well, we don't do that in March. So let's try to get as many done in February as we can. And then we can look at April for the next round.
Yeah.
And I know that. So it's helpful for me to then prepare so that I don't have to try to take time away from your time of focus. I don't have to try to figure out what to do because I already knew, you know. So,
and for you, you're communicating that you're going to be gone and going to Disney and whatnot. So we've known that around the office. So we are rallying around you, making sure that the things that need to get recorded beforehand, because they won't be able to get recorded while you're gone, right?
Right.
And yeah, communication is big. Having that realistic mindset goes beyond like, hey, yeah, I need to have a realistic mindset in my head, but it's communicating with everybody that's important to you or that's in your life, so that you guys can work together. Otherwise, that rest isn't going to happen well.
Yeah, so we've got the mindset of being realistic and understanding that a vacation's not a cure-all, right? It's not a magic solution to all our problems. Our mindset's in the right spot, but still, how do I make sure? What are the practical ways I can make sure that my time away is refreshing, it's recharging, and when I get back, I do have that renewed energy to tackle these things? So we're going to get into that right after this brief 1-minute money tip.
Question I get all the time is, how much is my premium going to go up if I file a claim? Short answer, I have no idea. Now, I could give you an educated guess, but that's going to be based on your specific situation, because there are so many factors that go into your renewal premium beyond whether or not you file a claim. That's something that I could help you with, but I would need to know what's going on at a deeper level. But the real question you need to be asking is, do I need to file an insurance claim? Now, here's the deal. If you're in a situation where your $20,000 vehicle has just been totaled, or you came home from work and the hose behind your fridge popped off and now you have to part the Red Sea, just to get into your kitchen, and we're talking thousands of dollars, yes, file a claim. That's why you have insurance. But if you're in a situation where your deductible is $1,000 and the total claim is $2,000, that's a time where you need to talk with your insurance advisor to see what's in your best interest, and that is something they can help you out because they know your specific situation.
All right, Grant. So I'm about 7 days away from heading out to California, and we're making the general preparations. We're thinking about what kinds of souvenirs are we going to buy, and we're thinking about what kinds of restaurants do we want to try to make sure we get to at Disney. Things like that. The hotel's all booked, but how do I best prepare? What's a practical thing I can do to prepare for this trip to make sure it's the most refreshing?
Yeah. So it starts with, as you mentioned earlier on, communication. So we got to communicate to everybody, yes, that we are going to be gone, but not just that you're going to be gone, what it's going to be like to get in touch with you. Are you going to fully unplug, or are there going to be ways that you're going to connect? Meaning, will you intentionally choose to open up your laptop at certain times throughout, right? So I'll go on vacations like that. There'll be times where I'm completely unplugged. You won't be able to get a hold of me at all. But there will be times where we'll go away, to California or something, and I'll spend most of the day with my family. But then after everybody goes to bed, I'm going to open up my laptop and I'm going to get some work done, right? And the team knows that. So you have to ahead of time communicate, but try to communicate the details of what your life is going to be like and what it's going to be like to get a hold of you during that time, because then that helps prepare everybody for, okay, well, if this is what your life's going to be like in your vacation or in your time away, that means while you're gone, or before you leave rather, we're going to need to get some stuff done, right? And you can schedule properly of like, oh, okay, yeah, as you said, we're 7 days away. Okay, what do I need to do in that next 7 days? Also, we all know that you should be setting away messages like in your email and like autoresponders. But did you know that you can also set those for your phone in text messages?
Really?
Yeah. So you can have autoresponders to text messages so that if somebody sends you a text message, you can say, hey, heads up, I'm on vacation from this time to this time. I may not be responding to my text messages, or I might be delayed, right? Or you can tell them, hey, respond to this person for me. Yes, autoresponders into your email. Yeah, I'm on vacation, or hey, I'm going to have delayed responses from this date to this date. In your voicemail, yeah, I'm going to have delayed responses from this date to this date. But it might be a good idea to set up certain rules in your email inbox. So here's an example. We at Stewardship Realty do these free things called discovery trips, where we take people out to go look at homes, even if they're not like shopping for a house, right? And the reason why we do this is because we believe that the more information that you have way early in the process, the better home buyer you become. So too often people are buying a home and then they have to deal with like buyer's remorse, or they have to like quickly find a home and they haven't done the research ahead of time to determine really what are neighborhoods like, what are homes like. So we help people take their curiosity and kind of dreaming beyond, clicking through things on Zillow and say, hey, we go look at homes anyways every week as part of our job because we have to research neighborhoods. If you ever want to come and check homes out, come with us. Or if you've got any homes you want us to take you in, great. And you leave your checkbook and you leave your, pen at home. There's no contract, something you have to sign. It's all free. And we just walk people through these things. And we're calling this a discovery trip. And this is new. Not a whole lot of real estate companies do this, right? So what I could do is set a rule in my email inbox that says, if there's any email that contains the words discovery trip, I'm going to put it in a specific folder. And the reason for that is when I get back, I'm going to have a ton of emails to go through, right? But now that specific folder will have all of those emails that contain discovery trip. And that is something that needs to be top of mind because that's a project that we're currently working on. It allows you to kind of prioritize what type of emails you're going to go tackle when you first get back. Because as we mentioned before, there's an expectation that we have to manage. There's a lot of things that are still going to be there and might be piled up when we get back. So let's do that. But really, this whole before phase of preparing for your time away, it has to do with not just communicating, but putting in a little bit of extra time and a little bit of extra effort so that things are less hectic when you return. Yeah, setting all those away messages, setting those autoresponders, setting those rules in your email inbox. But for me too, it's also setting my family's expectations. Before we head out of town, I will let my wife know, heads up, because we're going to be gone, I'm going to have to put in a few extra hours beforehand because there's work that I'll have to like do early or pre-do before we leave, right? So then my family knows that. They know that daddy's going to come home a little bit later, right, on those particular days because I'm preparing for when we're gone so that I can focus on them or work less when we are gone. So the before work has to do with communicating. It has to do with creating systems and rules and organization stuff, but it also has to do with actually putting in a little bit of extra time beforehand and letting everybody know, like, hey, this time's going to need to be done.
Yeah. And that made me think of something that I think is kind of intuitive, but I know for me has been difficult to practice. But when you mentioned doing a little bit extra work ahead of time so that we have that free space, so that we were able to prepare, it made me think of the old-timey Old Testament Sabbath practice.
Yeah.
Where they would have to do extra work so that they would have food ready for the Sabbath, because you couldn't prepare food on the Sabbath, right?
Yep.
There were things you couldn't do. And that was a result of developing a rhythm of work and rest.
Yeah.
And I think being able to put in these extra hours and obviously communicating with your family is important, but all of that, I think, comes easier the more work and rest becomes a sort of back and forth rhythm in our lives. I love the fact that you have March and September as your months of focus, and it's always the same months every year. My week unplug that I'm always like a last minute decider on when my week unplug will be. Last year I took it like at the end of November, and then now I'm taking it in January of this year, and it's just kind of whenever, and that makes it a lot more difficult to establish that rhythm.
Yeah.
And so, if it's possible in the work you're doing to make it a regular thing, then I think that makes that function a lot better.
It does. And it doesn't always have to be a regular time of year, but if you are regularly evaluating your time off when your time off ends, then it helps you build to get better for the next time off, right? So that's kind of where we get to the next step. It's like, okay, what do we do beforehand? What do we do afterwards? Well, one of the things you have to do afterwards in this step 2 is evaluate. So I sit down and I chat with my wife, or even talk with my kids and be like, hey, what'd you think of this vacation? What was, with my kids, I call it happy and crappy. What was your happy of the vacation? What was your crappy? But with my wife, it's just like, okay, what do we do right? What do we need to repeat?
Yeah.
All right, what was tough? What was a struggle? But then also looking in the mirror too, like, hey, what was good for me in that? How do I want to adjust things? What do I need to repeat? And some of that comes down to like, wait a minute, really, was I able to rest? Oh, hey, did I communicate well with everybody ahead of time? Man, what about those rules I set in my inbox? Did that even work? Man, how did people respond to those auto text messages? Should I do that again? But if you're evaluating after each vacation or after each rest time, then it allows you to think through, okay, this is what I want to do different next time, and then you're able to apply it. Like, I've been doing this type of evaluating for my rest time for years, right? So as a result, I've got a whole bunch of systems and processes to some that might seem like super overwhelming, but I didn't just come up with those one day. Right. It's just something that I have built on, and I've built on them because something that I believe all of us need to do for our rest time is when it's over, evaluate. How was it? How did it go? And what do I want to do different next time? Yeah, that's fantastic. I think it's important for me to remember I'm not going to fix everything by listening to one podcast. Yeah. Even if I do everything the podcast says, it's not going to make everything magically better, just like the vacation doesn't magically make the problems go away. Yeah. And on that same kind of thought process, when, hey, what do we need to do afterwards? We talked about what we need to do before. One thing that I think is wise to not do afterwards is setting appointments. So if I would come back from a vacation and then the next day I've got a ton of meetings, or I've got a speaking engagement, or I've got something that's just going to take a lot of my time, right? Man, it makes coming back tough because again, things don't stop when I'm gone, right? And things do pile up when I'm gone. So I need to build in some margin for me to be able to handle those things. I need to be able to have some margin to maybe organize what is disorganized and then tackle it. Yeah. And it's hard to do if I'm in and out of meetings or have a lot of appointments or have other things that are taking up my time. So another thing to not do afterwards is don't schedule a bunch of appointments like right when you return. One of the things that my wife and I learned, and this was fairly early on in our marriage, is, and this was actually after a Disneyland vacation, we got back, and for us, like for many people, Disneyland, if you're going and going and going and having a blast, you're tired when you're done.
Yeah.
And then you get back and then you have to wake up in the morning, you go to work. We're like, well, that stinks. I'm still tired. We like to end our vacations on Saturdays. Make sure we come home on Saturday. So then we still do have our rest day on Sunday.
Yeah.
And that gives us a day to just chill and kind of do nothing. A lot of times we won't go to church on those Sundays on purpose so that we can sleep in. But then it also gives us a day as a family to do our family calendar. And before the podcast, one of the questions that you had kind of asked me is like, yeah, I don't really know what systems and things to do with my family to do, before or after a vacation. I would strongly recommend that. Like you've got your week unplug or your time where you go on to Disney. I would make sure that you take a day afterwards just to 1, rest your body, 2, rest your mind, and 3, organize with your family what the next week's going to look like. Sam, who has been on the podcast before, a stewardship employee, and part of her role as my executive assistant, she just went to Hawaii. And before she left, I reminded her of this. I said, hey, make sure you take a day to just do nothing. Even if you need an extra day here to have off, take that because the jet lag coming back from Hawaii is real. And there's a lot that you're going to have to kind of digest after spending time with your daughter and doing those fun things and whatnot.
Yeah.
And it allows you to come back better. So we talked about what to do before. We're talking about now what to do after. And I think one of the things you've got to make sure you do after your vacation is add another day there where you don't do anything. And that has helped a lot for me. And now my wife knows, okay, if we're ever going to have a vacation or time away, I got to make sure that we do our best to return on a Saturday so that we have that time Sunday. And then I can go back to work on Monday and they can start, their week on Monday.
Yeah. I think we're coming back on a Monday.
Okay. Yep. That's what Sam did too. Yeah. And then she took Tuesday off.
Yeah.
And then now was back yesterday, which was Wednesday. So
yeah, I think I'm going to double check my calendar. I might have that Tuesday off.
Yep.
But we are going to send my daughter back to school because we don't want her to miss a day of preschool. She loves preschool.
That's cool. But even then, like if she goes to preschool and then you and Heather are able to drive her there together and then you get the day together to decompress and look back on the time that was and praise God for it. And think about all the fun stuff that you had and laugh and have memories, but then also say, okay, well, how could we improve? Next time we go to Disney, what are we going to do different? Next time we have vacation, what are we going to do different, right?
Yeah.
And then pick all of up from preschool together, having talked through all of that stuff. And then maybe even take her out to ice cream or a steamed milk at a coffee shop or something and just say, hey, what was your favorite part about Disney? What did you like the most? What do you want to do again? In evaluating with her, it helps. Then reminding her and reminding yourselves, okay, we're done with vacation. Let's get back into our rhythms. This week we have A, B, and C. We got to make sure we keep doing those. And then we're also the next week going to continue back with X, Y, and Z, right? So it's something that should be done, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So we talked about before.
Yep.
We've talked about after. Is there anything I can do while I'm gone that helps me?
Oh, yeah. The during. What do you do during your rest or during your vacation to make sure you actually
rest? The whole time?
Yeah, that would be great. At least for me. But no, that's what it comes down to is, I just said it, at least for me. What is it that you feel like you need rest from most? I'll give you an example. When we vacation with friends, we have some friends that love to cook. So as a result, if we go on vacation, they're like, all right, let's go to the grocery store. Let's get some food so that we can have our food ready for this vacation. Well, my wife does a lot of cooking at home and does a lot of cleaning at home. And I know she needs a rest from that. So the last thing I want her to do on a time away or a vacation is to do cooking and cleaning.
Yeah.
So I tell those friends, sorry, we're not doing that. I don't want my wife doing dishes. I don't want my wife cleaning, right? So those are things that you have to know and understand. What do you need rest from? So going out to eat more often than not when we're on a vacation is a huge break for my wife, something that she needs.
Yeah.
For me, I am on screens all the time. I am on all kinds of different social media. I'm on email. I'm in front of video and camera, and I'm on this podcast. So I take intentional breaks away from screens. I will leave my phone in the hotel. and just have my Apple Watch on me. So if anybody needs me, they can just call or text me. I don't have any other notifications coming to me there. I will sometimes leave my laptop at home and not even bust it out. Or if I do bust it out, it's at very intentional, scheduled times. I mentioned that before, right? If I'm going to bust out my laptop, I'll say, okay, it's going to be from this time to this time. But what do you need that rest from? And make sure you don't do that during the vacation.
Yeah. Like sometimes I might think I need a rest from my toddler, but that's not the case in this vacation.
Yeah.
And so I have to plan out. And I was even thinking as you were talking, well, if I need a break from her and my wife needs a break from her at times, then we can each take her from the other one. And I can say, hey, Heather, why don't you go to a coffee shop and read a book for an hour and a half, and I'll hang out with Olive. And then after that, we'll trade.
Yeah. And a lot of times we use generalizations saying, oh man, I need rest from my kids, or I need rest from my work, or I just need rest from life. And that's very general. But really what we're saying is, man, I need rest from the 145 emails I have to respond to each day at work. Yeah. I need rest from the constant go that I have in my life. And I just need to not go. I need to be on a vacation where there's no plan and we just sit, right?
Yeah.
Or we just go with the flow, rather. You don't need to rest from your toddler. It's what are the things in your relationship with your toddler, the engagements that you have with her that are frustrating to you, and how can you remove those engagements and have more different types of engagements, right? So instead of constantly trying to parent her and teach her and coach her, you decide, hey, you know what? During this vacation, we're going to have rules. But instead of constantly telling her no and teaching her, I'm going to hold my tongue when teaching her over this 3-day period while we're away. And I'm going to do my best to say yes more than I'm going to say no. Right? Or whatever that thing is, because that's really, none of us really need a break from our kids. We love our kids.
I love spending time with her.
Yeah,
so much.
exactly.
Yeah.
But there's certain engagements that we have with our children that do wear on us. And if they're honest, it wears on them too. So what is it specifically in your relationship or in your life that you need rest from? Try to go beyond the generalization of, I need rest from work. I need rest from my kid. Well, what is it? What is it about those things that you need rest from? And make sure you're doing everything that you can during the vacation to remove those things, not do those things, and engage in something else. And honestly, Dan, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard, at least when you first start doing it, to leave your cell phone in your hotel room.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really hard. It's really hard to stop, quote unquote, parenting or coaching your kids and constantly trying to teach them something. At least it is for me. I'm always trying to make a life lesson out of something. They're going to be so tired of me when they get older. And I have to stop that and just listen and let them be. And it's really hard to think twice before saying no when they ask for something and doing your best to say yes during the vacation because you say no so much, especially to a toddler, right? Those things that you need rest from, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to do it. So another thing that you can do during is get accountability during. So speak with your spouse about it. You and Heather need to talk and say, look, here are the things I think specifically that I need rest from. Here's the things that I need to not do as much as I'm engaging with Olive. Would you help me in that? When I do it, would you lovingly just grab my collar and say, hey, you did the thing. Let's not do that next time, right? And yep, you're right. Sorry, I got to think through that better, Or, hey, when you notice me about to do that, would you give me, the signal, the high sign, Or, just tap me on the shoulder and let me know. That accountability will help you because, again, it's going to be really hard to break away from those things that you need rest from. Because the truth is, sometimes those things that we need rest from, we're doing over and over and over again in our normal life because people are counting on us for those things.
Yeah.
It's valuable to other people, so that's why we have to do it all the time, and or we're good at it. And it's hard. It's hard to stop doing things you're good at, and it's hard to stop doing things that add value to people's lives.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, that's really good. I needed to hear that, and I need to have a conversation with Heather.
Yeah.
And also, I want to ask her, what do you need rest from?
Yes.
And how can we make sure we get that for both of us? And another practical thing that I remember that we've made content about before, I believe it was a 1-minute money tip. Probably won't be the one for this podcast episode, but you've talked about taking a break from your budget, specifically on vacation, taking a vacation from the budget. And Heather and I are going to be trying that this time. We've set a budget for the trip, so we know how much total we're going to spend, but we're actually transferring it into a separate checking account with a different debit card.
Yep.
And we're going to use that card so that we don't have to track expenses the whole time, because
you're no longer reconciling or like categorizing or like organizing. It's just, hey, if there's money there, we spend it. Mm-hmm. If not, we don't swipe the card, and that's easy,
Yeah, exactly. And that will be a little bit challenging for us because of how much we live by entering all the receipts into YNAB, making sure that everything is reconciled. So it's going to be a little bit difficult, but I think it'll be a lot more freeing for that time that we have away. So that's another thing that I guess I need a break from, the strictness of the budget. And
here's something I really want to encourage you with, and hopefully this encourages our listeners as well. You're not going to execute this vacation perfectly beforehand. You're not going to execute this vacation perfectly afterwards. You're not going to execute this vacation perfectly during. And all of these steps and things that I laid out, there's a lot there, and it can be overwhelming. Just pick 1 or 2 of the things that I had mentioned and try them. And when you fail in them, because you will, be encouraged that you tried.
Yeah.
Be encouraged that you tried. Because when you tried it and you failed it, it's going to help you understand if you should try it again or how to do it different next time. And that's a big deal. It's a process to learn how to properly rest. You really, it's not weird to say, but we really do have to learn to properly rest. And you're not going to get it right every time. You will fail and make mistakes. It's not going to go exactly how you thought or planned, and that's okay. But celebrate when it does. And when you make those mistakes, have grace for yourself and figure out what you want to do different next time.
Yeah, that's really good. And it's making me just feel grateful for the fact that I can try to rest. I have that ability. What a gift that we can take time away. And rest.
And I want you to rest because, as I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, you're so great at producing the media and things here, and specifically on this podcast. All I have to do is walk in the door, put on the headphones, and show up, and I go. That's unbelievably valuable, and we need that value, and we need you to be at your best. And the only way you will be at your best is if you rest well. And I'm looking forward to seeing how you rest well and having you back so that you can continue to add value, not just to me, but more importantly, add value to the lives of our clients, everybody who's listening now, as we do our best to love them through finances, and even on this podcast.
Yeah. Thank you, Grant. And, well, you know what to do. Hopefully you have a chance coming up with spring break, with all the busyness of 2023 as it gets rolling. Think about your next vacation. Get ready, prepare, set those email rules, and make sure you take some time to rest this year. I've heard a lot of people are making the theme for this year, taking it down a notch, just dialing back.
Yeah.
Things have been crazy for so long. So hopefully this podcast has been helpful for that. Again, if you missed the other episode on rest, check that out in the description. And thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you soon.